Welcome back to Plava Recap. Today, we're diving into the 2014 coming-of-age romantic film, The Fault in Our Stars. But remember, spoilers lie ahead, so proceed with caution. Hazel, a teenager, lies on the grass, gazing at the stars. She expresses her belief that we have the power to shape the narrative of our sad stories. She acknowledges that while it's tempting to gloss over the pain with uplifting music, it's not an accurate reflection of reality. Hazel suffers from stage 4 thyroid cancer, and she's always seen with her oxygen tank and nasal cannula, which help her breathe more comfortably. Lately, Hazel has been feeling low, but it's not a sign of weakness. In fact, she's extraordinarily courageous. Her parents, Franny and Michael, along with her doctor, Maria, encourage her to attend a cancer support group at a church called the Literal Heart of Jesus. Here, individuals with various illnesses gather to share their struggles and experiences. The group is led by Patrick, a survivor of testicular cancer. Despite his divorce and living with his parents, Patrick remains optimistic. On her first day at the group, Hazel discusses her lung cancer and her constant companion, the oxygen bag. Franny hopes Hazel will make friends at the group, but Hazel believes that having a child with cancer is the only thing worse than battling cancer herself. During one of her visits to the group, Hazel bumps into Augustus Waters. Gus, as he's known, can't take his eyes off Hazel during the meeting. Patrick first calls on Isaac, Gus's friend who lost an eye to a tumor and now has a glass eye, though he is thankful because of his smoking hot girlfriend Monica. When Gus is called upon, he reveals that he's in remission from osteosarcoma, a type of bone cancer that spreads from one limb in the skeleton to another, which cost him half of his right leg. When asked about his fears, Gus admits to fearing oblivion. A notion Hazel dismisses this down advises him by saying that eventually everything and everyone will be gone and forgotten, and if that scares him, he should ignore it. After the meeting, Hazel waits for her mother, and Gus approaches her for a chat. They witness Isaac and Monica, his girlfriend, in a passionate embrace, repeatedly whispering always to each other. Gus explains to Hazel that it's their way of expressing their eternal love. He asks her full name and compliments Hazel on her beauty, which surprises her. He then places a cigarette in his mouth, which disappoints Hazel until he explains that he never lights it, refusing to give power to the very thing that kills. As Gus drives Hazel to his house, he asks her about her journey with cancer. She shares her story, revealing that she was diagnosed at 13 and underwent extensive treatment, but it wasn't effective. Her lungs started filling with fluid, landing her in the ICU. Then, miraculously, her medication started working. Upon reaching Gus's house, they meet his parents. Gus takes Hazel to the basement and asks her to share her real story, not just her cancer story. She claims to be unremarkable, but he disagrees with that. He gives her a copy of his favorite book, Counterinsurgents, based on his favorite video game. In return, Hazel recommends her favorite book, An Imperial Affliction, about a girl with leukemia, but she assures Gus it's not just a cancer story. Hazel eagerly anticipates Gus's call, and after a few days, he messages her upon finishing An Imperial Affliction. Surprised by the book's mid-sentence ending, where the protagonist, Anna, apparently dies during her narration, Gus expresses his astonishment. Hazel, caught up in the unfolding drama, excuses herself from dinner to engage in a telephone conversation with Gus. However, their exchange is abruptly interrupted by Isaac, who passionately wails a song lyric in the background. Gus extends an invitation for Hazel to come over, and there she discovers a surprising revelation. Monica has ended her relationship with Isaac just before his upcoming eye operation, where his remaining eye will be removed. The reason behind the breakup is Monica's inability to handle the consequences of Isaac losing his other eye. Gus says Isaac is having a psychotic episode, which Hazel considers a normal reaction to a breakup. Gus allows Isaac to vent his frustration on his basketball trophies. While Isaac smashes them, Gus talks to Hazel about the ending of the book, and she tells him that she has written hundreds of letters to ask the book's author, Peter Van Houten, questions about what happened after the story, such as the fate of Anna's mother and her relationship with the Dutch tulip man and Anna's pet hamster Sisyphus. One evening during a telephone conversation, Gus tells Hazel that he tracked down Van Houten's assistant and got a response from a message he wrote to Peter Van Houten. Van Houten thanked Gus for his and Hazel's interest in the novel, and that he has no current plans to write any follow-ups or a sequel to An Imperial Affliction. Hazel is surprised that it took that one email to get a response. She decides to write her own email back to Van Houten to ask her questions. Hazel later reads the email to Gus, and they stay talking until 1 a.m. Hazel decides it's time to hang up. "Okay," Gus responds. "Okay," Hazel says back. Gus decides that okay can be their version of always. A few days later, Hazel receives her own response from Van Houten, who also thanks her for her interest in the story and even invites her to visit him in Amsterdam. Overjoyed, Hazel tells her mother, and while she wants to make her daughter happy, she knows they wouldn't be able to afford it. Then Hazel realizes the trip would be financially challenging for her family. Hazel tells Gus about the invitation, and Gus suggests asking the Jennies, a wish-granting sort of organization, to grant her this wish by funding the trip. Hazel reveals that she has already used her wish to go to Disney World. Gus is disappointed that she used her wish on a cliché. A while later, Gus shows up at Hazel's home with orange tulip flowers and a basketball shirt of Rick Smits, the Dutch basketball player, and then invites her on a picnic to a park featuring a giant skeleton playground called Funky Bones, a replica of an artwork by a Dutch artist. Gus jokes that he has brought all his romantic conquests here, and that is why he is a virgin. He even illustrates this by drawing a circle in the dirt of virgins and a small circle within of 18-year-old boys with one leg. As they have their picnic, Gus tells her that he spoke to the Jennies and convinced them to grant him the wish of taking Hazel to Amsterdam. She is ecstatic. Hazel wakes up in the middle of the night having trouble breathing as fluid fills her lungs. Her parents rush her to the hospital, with Gus waiting outside since he is not allowed in family only. Hazel has the fluid drained from her lungs and she recovers. After a meeting with her doctors, they determine that she is physically unfit to travel anywhere in her condition. Hazel then has a flashback to when she was in the ICU, as a child, with Franny telling her she can let go, and then sobbing to Michael that she won't be a mom anymore. Feeling dejected, Hazel does not respond to any telephone calls and text messages from Gus. She sits in front of a swing in the backyard that her father built when she was a child. She finally calls Gus and expresses her sadness. He comes over and they sit on the swing. He reassures her that her illness doesn't change his feelings for her. She compares herself to a grenade and that she will blow up and destroy everything in her wake. Not wanting to hurt Gus, Hazel decides they ought to remain friends. Days later, unexpectedly, Hazel receives an email from Lydwidge, Van Houten's assistant, to extend the invitation again after learning that they will be traveling to Amsterdam in a week. Hazel calls her mother in, and she admits that she wanted to surprise her together with her father, but they are indeed going to Amsterdam. Hazel hugs Franny and then texts Gus. He replies with a triumphant, "Everything is coming up waters." She then pleads with her lungs to cooperate for at least a week. Gus in a limousine arrives to escort Hazel and her mother Franny to the airport, declaring he wants to travel in style. On the plane, Gus becomes nervous as he's never flown on a plane before, and he becomes excited once they take off. When Hazel gives Gus a peck on the cheek, Franny finds them adorable. On their first day of evening in Amsterdam, Gus, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, knocks on the door of Hazel and Franny's room. He's there to take Hazel out for their dinner. Franny, impressed by how handsome Gus looks in his smoking, welcomes him in. Hazel, looking stunning in a beautiful blue dress gifted by Franny, takes Gus's breath away with her elegance. Their Amsterdam adventure begins with a tranquil canal ride, followed by a visit to Orangie, a local Dutch restaurant. At the restaurant, they're welcomed as Mr. and Mrs. Waters, served Dom Perignon for the first time, and they enjoy it. They have their dinner, and Gus proudly declares his love to Hazel, bringing a big smile to her face. To their surprise, the waiter reveals that the entire dinner has been paid for by Van Houten, adding a touch of unexpected generosity to their evening. The following day, Hazel and Gus go to meet Van Houten. They are greeted at the door by Lydwidge, who welcomes them inside. Unopened fan mail is scattered all over the floor. The couple finds Van Houten in his pajamas, drinking scotch. They sit down so Van Houten can answer their questions, but he instead orders Lydwidge to play Swedish rap. Despite the loud music, Hazel begins to ask her questions, such as the fate of Anna's mother and the Dutch tulip man, but Van Houten only responds with philosophical nonsense. Gus asks him if he is messing with them, and Van Houten makes a rude comment about Gus's cancer. He further exacerbates the situation by refusing to answer Hazel's questions and insulting her in Gus's illnesses. Hazel and Gus storm out in anger. Van Houten asks her why she dwells on these questions, and Hazel bluntly tells him off. Lydwidge, appalled by Van Houten's behavior, offers to take Hazel and Gus to the Anne Frank house. Since there are no elevators, Hazel must walk up all the stairs and climb the ladder, which puts a strain on her breathing. They get up to the floor with a vocal recording of Anne Frank's diary. As Anne Frank's thoughts and writings are voiced about capturing beauty and being happy in difficult circumstances, Hazel and Gus share their first kiss. The onlookers, including Lydwidge, applaud them. They go back to Gus's room and make love for the first time. Hazel leaves him with a drawing of the large virgin circle and the circle of 18-year-old boys with one leg outside that big circle. On their last day in Amsterdam, Hazel and Gus have breakfast with Franny before spending some time alone together. They go for a walk and sit on a bench, and Gus tells Hazel that when she was in the ICU, he felt a pain in his hip and got a PET scan. Hazel already knows what he's going to tell her. Gus says the scan lit up like a Christmas tree, and the cancer returned and spread through his body. It means he is in the final stage. For the first time, Hazel sees him cry, a man who always kept others happy. Hazel puts her head on his shoulder and cries. Gus tries to lighten the mood by suggesting they make out. Hazel, Gus, and Franny return to Indianapolis with Michael picking them up. A few days later, Hazel and Gus hang out with Isaac, who is now completely blind, and tells them that Monica hasn't spoken to him since the breakup. To cheer him up, Hazel and Gus buy eggs, and they go to Monica's home and let Isaac pelt her car with eggs. In the middle of the night, Gus calls Hazel, requesting her assistance at a gas station. She drives over to find him in his car, covered in his own mucus and vomit, suffering from an abdominal infection due to his G-tube. He's in search of a new pack of cigarettes, having misplaced his old one. Despite Gus's objections, Hazel dials 911, summoning an ambulance. Upon its arrival, Gus is transported to the hospital. Gus continues his cancer treatment until the doctor's decision is made to stop chemotherapy. Hazel, not being a family member, is now denied access to Gus's hospital room. Gus's mobility is now dependent on a wheelchair. Hazel accompanies him to the park with the Funky Bones replica for a picnic, where Gus expresses his longing to have made a significant impact on the world before his death and his need to live an extraordinary life. Hazel takes offense to it and tells him that he doesn't need to do all that because she and his parents love him and that this should be enough. He agrees, says he's sorry, and then they share a glass of champagne. One evening, aware that his days are numbered, Gus invites Hazel to a gathering at the Literal Heart of Jesus, asking her to bring along a eulogy that he requested she write for him. As she prepares to leave, her parents, who are setting up dinner, stop her. Hazel confronts them about their life after her death, recalling her mother's fear of not being a mother anymore. Franny, surprised that Hazel remembers this, explains that she now knows she was wrong and reassures her that she will always be Hazel's mother, even after her death. Hazel's parents affirm their undying love for her and reveal that Franny is training to become a social worker to assist families going through a similar process. Hazel is happy to hear this and does not have to worry about her parents if she dies. Her parents will find fulfillment even after she is gone. Hazel joins Gus and Isaac at the church for something like a pre-funeral that Gus wants to witness, since he wishes to attend his own funeral. Isaac begins his eulogy with some jokes, but then mentions that if he ever gets robot eyes, he would refuse them because he doesn't want to see a world without Gus. Hazel takes her turn to speak, sharing their love story with Gus and then shifting to talk about mathematics. She mentions that between the numbers 0 and 1, there are endless other numbers like countless infinities. Hazel expresses her gratitude for their unique infinity. Lastly, they both say, "I love you" to each other for the final time. 8 days later, Gus passes away. The Lancasters receive the news in a late-night phone call. Hazel's parents enter her room, and without a word, Hazel understands the situation and breaks down in tears. She recalls a time when undergoing treatment, and the nurse asked her to rate her pain on a scale from 1 to 10. Hazel said 9, and the nurse said she was a fighter for calling a 10 a 9. She says that she was not being brave at the time, but reserving 10 for moments of extreme pain like this. Gus's funeral takes place, attended by Hazel and her parents. As the preacher speaks, Hazel is surprised to see Van Houten among the attendees. When she called to speak, Hazel corrects the preacher that she is not just a friend, but Gus's girlfriend, places a pack of cigarettes between the flowers on his coffin, and shares a new eulogy that she thinks is more suitable for the public attending the funeral. After the funeral, Hazel decides to drive home alone, and Van Houten enters her car. She learns that Van Houten and Gus had been in contact before Gus's death, and Gus had told Van Houten that he could redeem himself by visiting Hazel and answering her questions. Van Houten reveals that the character Anna was based on his own daughter, who died of leukemia at the age of 8. Before she furiously sends him out of her car, Van Houten gives Hazel a letter, which she crumples up and throws away. As she drives away, she sees him drinking from his flask in the car's mirror. In the aftermath of Gus's passing, Hazel finds solace in the comforting presence of her father. Isaac pays a visit later, sharing with Hazel how Gus's affection for her was a constant topic of conversation, to the point of being overwhelming. He inquires if she had read the letter from Van Houten, which was actually penned by Gus. Hazel realizes that the discarded letter in her car was Gus's, not Van Houten's. The letter is a heartfelt eulogy to Hazel, written by Gus. Gus's voice echoes as he reads the letter, recounting the moments he spent in Hazel's ICU room while she slept, holding her hand and contemplating their shared experiences. He expresses his admiration for her captivating beauty and unique personality, and acknowledges that people have the power to choose who they let into their lives. Gus was content with his choice, and he hoped Hazel felt the same about hers. He concludes the letter with, "Okay, Hazel Grace." The film draws to a close with Hazel, lying on the grass, gazing at the stars, responding with a simple, "Okay." We hope you enjoyed our recap here at Plava Recap. If you're a fan of this genre of movies, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you crave more cinematic magic, be sure to subscribe to our channel. You won't miss a single recap. Until next time, enjoy your viewing.